The third condition that is often confused for narcissistic personality disorder in a really interesting way is autism. So I'll admit that I don't know as much about it as I'd like to, but there has been attention recently about how people with on the autism spectrum disorder on the autism spectrum are confused or misdiagnosed with having a personality disorder. I've seen this more in the borderline personality disorder world, where people are saying, I got diagnosed with BPD, but actually I have autism, or masking autism, like, which is a version of being able to hide those, compensate for some of the lack of ability to read other people's social cues or to adapt to new social situations, right? So I've always been fascinated by thinking about personality disorders as maybe on the spectrum, right? It's like a learning deficit for social situations. Um, but that I could go on a soapbox about that, so I'll spare you. But it's always fascinating to know, like, when people have a personality disorder and can't adapt their behaviors, like, oh, I need to be special, I need to be the most beautiful, but that is actually getting in the way of the relationships. Why don't they adapt? That's something that we see in personality disorders, but also autism, right? So with autism and narcissistic personality disorder, there are some things that are similar. One is the lack of empathy. And we talk about it different ways in the different disorders, but empathy is a big set of different processes. But at the core of it, it can look like missing social cues, or not paying attention to your needs and feelings, or prioritizing their own needs and feelings and saying things that might be rude or disrespectful or inconsiderate to the other person, right? So these missing social cues is present both in narcissistic personality disorder and autism, um, in a really fascinating way. But with narcissism, we think more about, anyway, sorry, I won't get into the differences yet, but missing the social cues is one. Another thing is just compassion and empathy expression. Like, it might be very hard for people with both of those disorders to validate, like, recognize and validate someone else's feelings. And there is like this kind of self-focus sometimes. Patients that have had both with either autism or NPD, they talk a lot about themselves. They just sit and talk about their interests for very long periods of time without reading any social cues that I like, not listening, or we want to talk about something else. They kind of get lost in their heads and talk, right? And the key part that I always see as, like, maybe an underlying transdiagnostic process, something that binds the two disorders together, is rigidity in social situations.